25 years of keeping the promise, and we want you to be part of that celebration. Join us on Saturday, July 19th at the Plano Convention Center in North Texas for a Jubilee Year of Hope event featuring talks from Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers, Father Chris Alar, and more. Celebrate Mass, venerate relics, and enjoy a concert by Matt Maher. It's free to attend, but registration is required. Visit grnonline.com/anniversary and reserve your spot today.
The resurrection of Jesus inspires us to embrace hope, love, and transformation in our lives. This is the Guadalupe Radio Network, radio for your soul. Thanks for listening to KATH 910 AM, Frisco, Dallas, Fort Worth, and North Texas. Catholic radio for your soul on the Guadalupe Radio Network. Heard also at grnonline.com and on your smartphone.
Welcome to The Quest from the studios of the Guadalupe Radio Network. Join us as we journey together on this pilgrimage of faith with today's host, Father Doug Brown, answering your calls with Sissel Anderson.
And good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much to listening to The Quest here on the Guadalupe Radio Network. It is our live afternoon program where we encourage your participation through calling us up, writing your comments on YouTube, Instagram, or all the other social platforms that we're on, or you can also email us, and I'll give out all that information here in just a moment. My name is Sissel Anderson, and I am guest hosting today in place of Madigan Mayer, who is normally with you, but she's been out, but don't worry, she'll be returning shortly. And oh my goodness, what an exciting day to be going live and taking your calls. I don't know, maybe something kind of big happened today. I don't know if you noticed or not, but we have a pope. We have a pope. The conclave ended, the white smoke went up, and we now have Pope Leo the 14th is our new pope, and we're going to talk all about that. But first, let me very excitedly introduce you to our guest priest today. Father Doug Brown is joining us from the Diocese of Cleveland. He is a first responder chaplain for the police and firefighters there in the Cleveland area, and he's a familiar voice on AM 1260 The Rock, which is Cleveland's Catholic radio station, and we're so grateful that he is joining us today to talk about this amazing historic moment when we have our first American Pope. Welcome to the program, Father Brown.
Thanks, Sissel. Really, it's hard to believe that we have an American Pope. I mean, people had asked, like, what do you think about if we'll get an American Pope? And they all want my opinion, speculation, before the conclave started and during it. And I said, we'll never have an American Pope. I can't imagine us having an American Pope. And you know how God likes to prove us wrong sometimes. He likes to humble us. He likes to bring us a good dose of humility. And that's what he did. So it's great news for the church. I think anytime a new Holy Father comes in, there's a brand new perspective. There's a brand new sense of enthusiasm, excitement, and attention given to the church. So those are all positives for us. I think it's great.
Yes, you're right. We are quite literally under a telescope right now for the whole world. Everyone was watching for the past couple of days since the conclave began. We're watching this chimney waiting for smoke to come out, and a heck of a lot of seagulls as well. There was a lot of birds on that camera. But finally, earlier this morning and afternoon for us here in the States, but of course not quite the same time there. But the white smoke came out, and I'm just curious, Father, had you been watching, all day, or were you kind of away from your computer or TV when the news hit that first off that we had a pope, and then maybe talk a little bit about your reaction when you found out who our new pope was? So
I'd been aware of Cardinal Robert Prevost prior to this, but not in an in-depth way. Certainly, I don't know him personally, but I was familiar with him. His name had been kind of tossed around as somebody who could be a possible contender for the papacy, I suppose. I didn't really follow this conclave as close as I thought I might have. I feel like when I get so invested in these things that they become all-consuming, and I didn't want that experience, and so I was paying attention. I was keeping track of when smoke was supposed to come out and what color it was and all that. And then when my phone started blowing up, people started texting me and calling white smoke. Then I knew that it was that something big was about to happen because we're about to get a new Holy Father. So this is, gosh, I don't know if this is my 6th or 7th Holy Father in my lifetime, but I can really remember certainly the last 3 or so, Benedict, Francis, and now Leo. And so that's very exciting to me to have those memories and compare those. So when it was actually announced, I have to tell you, I was in a car, and I was a friend of mine who was a police officer, and his brother, who was also a police officer for Cleveland. His brother has cancer of the throat, and his brother had asked to see a priest. And so we were driving to his house, which is about 45 minutes away. So I was in the car, and I was watching it on my phone a little bit, and very exciting. Yeah, very exciting. So that's where I was. Not very glamorous, not very, I wasn't at my, like when Francis was elected, I remember going over the church and ringing the bells and ringing the bells. I couldn't do that. I wasn't there. So.
No, but you were doing the work that you were doing your vocation, which I think
Absolutely
is important as well. I want to remind everyone that this is The Quest. We are a live call-in show that the Guadalupe Radio Network puts on each weekday afternoon at 4 p.m. Central. We would love your participation. We'd love to get your thoughts on your initial reactions. Maybe tell us where you were, what you were doing when you found out who our new Pope was, Pope Leo the 14th. Call us up, 877-757-9424, 877-757-9424, or you can also email your questions to thequest@grnonline.com, thequest@grnonline.com, and as always, we are live streaming on our social platforms, so you can comment them there, and Matthew will keep us appraised of what's going on. And if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to add to the conversation, and Father, this is actually the first conclave that I've been Catholic for, so this was very exciting. So I became Catholic when I was 17, about 9 years ago. Yeah, 9 years ago.
Wow.
So that was shortly after Pope Francis had been elected. And so it was kind of a new and a fun experience, but I also, kind of similar to you, even though it was new and exciting, I didn't want to get too consumed by it, because I think there's a point where we can get a little unhealthily obsessed with who's it going to be and all that kind of thing. But it was really exciting to watch when the smoke came out. And I was actually in the hallway here in our studios talking to some of my coworkers, and we all got the notification of white smoke, and we're running back to our desks, and you're just waiting, and they kept filming the door, and I was like, when's it going to open? When is it going to open? And when it did, and they made the announcement, I'm going to be honest, I had not heard of Cardinal Prevost before today, or if I had, it didn't stick in my memory. And so it was really exciting to hear that we had a pope from America. That was really awesome. So definitely not how I expected my Thursday afternoon to go, but all work was a little derailed for a while, as I'm sure you can imagine. But if anyone would like to call in and share their thoughts, share where you were, maybe offer a prayer of gratitude for our new Pope, go ahead and call us up right now. We'd love to have you join the conversation. 877-757-9424, 877-757-9424. And Father Brown, I would love to get your thoughts on the name that he chose, Pope Leo the 14th, which, if we have Pope Leo the 13th that came in the last century and did a lot of amazing things, including some very beautiful encyclicals, but a very, very interesting and beautiful choice of name.
I agree with you. I think it's a great name, and so when you kind of look at, like, okay, first impressions, right? I love the name that he chose. I think that that's terrific. And when we look at those Leos that have served our church throughout the centuries, they've always had some kind of great impact on the church. And we look back to Leo the 13th, and certainly he was a staunch proponent of church teaching. He was very strong in church teaching. And also, he's considered the founder of the social movement within the church, from his encyclical Rerum Novarum, which focused upon the rights of the worker. And so with all of that, I think it's a great name. So first impression of the name, I love it. I think it's great. And I'm happy that he chose that name. I think that's and there's got to be some thought put into that, right?
Sure.
So imagine if you're in the conclave. I mean, when do you begin thinking about what your name's going to be? When do you begin having that idea of, gosh, maybe would I be Pius? Would I be Leo? Would I, who am I going to be? And he obviously had given some thought to this and wanted to follow, I believe, in the tradition of Leos that have served our church. So that's a great first impression.
For sure. Yeah, I do think it's interesting to picture yourself being in the conclave and there is a small possibility you could be the next pope, and you're like, how much thought do you put into it without being presumptuous, but also you don't want to be caught unawares. You want to have prayed about that a little bit and not just, come up with a name now. And so I'd be very fascinated to hear if he will give any comments to, maybe particularly which of the Pope Leos he looks up to the most.
That'll be interesting to hear. So, there's so much we have to learn. And the other interesting thing, Sissel, is that, the age that we're in, of course, is the proliferation of electronic media, of social media, of all of those things have now allowed us to, immediately obtain information about Pope Leo XIV. And people were, scrolling through his past tweets, and they were looking at, the things that he had done and the things that he had said. We've never been able to do that with such immediacy. And so that's a very, very powerful statement to make today. And I'll admit, I did some of that too. I was looking at some things. Who is this guy?
Yeah. My first Google search was who is Cardinal
Right.
Prevost? Who is this man? I want to know a little bit more. We're about to go to a break, Father Brown, but I think on the other side, I'd love to continue the conversation of maybe what is the best way that we as the laity can approach, our new pope and have a healthy curiosity about him, but also maybe not going a little too far on it and making maybe presumptions very early on what kind of pope we can expect. This is The Quest, which is a production of the Guadalupe Radio Network. My name is Sissel Anderson, and I'm filling in today for Madigan Mayor, and I'm joined with Father Doug Brown, who's coming to us from the Diocese of Cleveland. And we are going to be taking a short break, but we'd love to have you join the conversation about our new pope, the first American pope. It is very exciting. Come in, call us up, give us your comments, your questions, maybe say a prayer for our new pope, because this is a very exciting time in our church. And of course, the pope always needs a lot of prayer. The number to call is 877-757-9424, 877-757-9424, or you can email thequest@grnonline.com. We'll be back right after this break.
Get ready to be inspired. On July 19th, join the Guadalupe Radio Network's 25th anniversary celebration in Plano, Texas. Experience powerful talks from Father Chris Alar and Deacon Harold Burke-Sivers. Learn about our faith, deepen your understanding, and grow closer to Christ. It's a day full of insight, inspiration, and spiritual growth. And it's completely free. Mark your calendars and don't miss out on this incredible opportunity. Visit grnonline.com/anniversary.
Hi, I'm Adam Bly, here with Debbie Georgiani from The Spirit World.
After 2 weeks of truly wonderful guest interviews, Adam and I are very eager to get back to your calls.
This weekend's episode is our open forum for the month of May. Deb and I are ready to answer your questions about angels, demons, saints, or anything in the spiritual world.
And since May is the month of Mary, this is a great time for you to share your questions about the Blessed Virgin Mary.
So listen on Saturday at 10 a.m. Central, 11 a.m.
Welcome back to The Quest, an extraordinary journey where every step brings us closer to discovering God's love for us. Want to join the conversation? Give us a call at 877-757-9424.
Good afternoon and welcome back to The Quest. My name is Sissel Anderson, filling in for Madigan Mayor today, and I am joined on the air all the way from Cleveland, Father Doug Brown, who is one of the priests who are taking care of our first responders and is the chaplain for them, which is a beautiful thing inside your vocation, I'm sure, Father. And he's also a familiar voice on AM 1260, The Rock, which is Cleveland's Catholic radio station. And so we're very blessed that he's joining us today on this very exciting day where we found out our new Pope, Pope Leo the 14th. And before the break, Father, we talked a little bit about the name that Pope Leo chose, Leo, and we actually got an email with expanding more questions regarding that. But really quickly, let me give out the phone number if you would like to call in and join the conversation. Give us your first reactions to an American Pope. Say your prayers for him or ask any questions that you might have. Father Brown is here available to you. The number to call is 877-757-9424, 877-757-9424. And Father Brown, we had an email from oh goodness, I've lost her name already, but from Lorraine, listening on the GRN app. Thank you so much for listening, Lorraine. She was asking initially, what do you make of the Pope's name choice? And she said that she was surprised he didn't pick Augustine, being from that order. And she goes, I know that Pope Leo the 13th introduced the proper understanding of Catholic social teaching. Do you think this will be something important to him?
It's hard to say. I mean, right now when we look at the church, there are so many things to address. And I think every pope develops their own sense of what is a priority and what isn't. But my guess is he's going to do a lot of listening at the very start. And we won't be able to get a clear idea of what his priorities may be for some time. It's going to take some time. He'll likely be our Holy Father for a long time.
Yes, it's true. He is quite young, and so we will be blessed with him for a while. And yes, it'll be very interesting to see it unfold, to kind of finding out the reasoning behind why he chose that name as time goes on. And we also have a question from Sal in DC asking, do you think the canonizations will take place? I'm not sure if they're meaning like when will they take place, because we know there were a couple of young Catholics who were going to be canonized. Blessed Carlos Acutis was just going to be canonized just Divine Mercy weekend. And of course, with the passing of Pope Francis, that was postponed. And then later this year, Blessed Giorgio Frassati. So I guess the question is, will they be delayed longer? How long do you think that will take before that happens?
That's hard to say. I think that would be something that he would want to do pretty soon. I think why wait on that? And it'll give the world an opportunity to see more of him. And I think right now that's what everybody wants. We want to see more of him. We want to hear from him. We want to listen to what his words are, what he has to say to us.
Certainly.
An ambiguous answer,
Yeah.
but
Hey,
I believe it's not going to be delayed for an excessive amount of time.
It would be interesting because they're both young Catholics. I wonder if would they do you think two at a time? Is that something that they might do, or they keep them separate and keep them spaced out? Is that, I'm trying to think about in the past, if what I remember they've said or not.
I mean, they could, though. I think they could do them at the same time. Certainly. That's a possibility. And he's a pope, so he wants to do them both at the same time. He can do them both at the same time.
Who are we to stop him?
Who are we to stop him?
And Father, we also have some comments coming in on YouTube. Ryan, first off, he says, Viva il Papa. And he says, Father, how do you think Pope Leo the 14th's Augustinian background will shape his pontificate?
I think, being from a religious order, as most of the popes have been from religious orders for the most part, that idea of community and about sacrifice for the good of the order or for the greater good. I'm a diocesan priest, so I look at things probably a little bit differently than those who might be in religious life. Religious life tends to have more of a communal orientation, and less so than a diocesan priest might have. Diocesan priests tend to be a little more independent. That's stereotypical, but that's kind of what the stereotypes tend to be, and I think they're pretty true. So that type of background in religious life, I think, will be helpful for him in getting the idea of the greater good and community, what's best for the whole church.
I have a couple of coworkers, one who loves St. Augustine and his teachings and the way he taught, and my boss, Dave Palmer, really loves St. Thomas Aquinas and his philosophies, and they have a lot of playful back and forth, and today there was a lot of that going on, and so the one coworker who loves St. Augustine was just like, oh, he's Augustinian, that's awesome, a win for the Augustinians, and then my boss did point out that he named himself Pope Leo the 14th, and Pope Leo the 13th wrote a very beautiful encyclical all about St. Thomas Aquinas' teaching. So I think he's right down the middle. He likes both, I think.
I mean, so the other interesting thing about Pope Leo the 14th is that he's also a canon lawyer, and he was a math. I mean, I can't even imagine. I barely made it out of trigonometry in high
feel
school.
that.
I really struggled with that. So a math major is pretty impressive. But I think that sense of objectivity that comes along with being a canon lawyer and a mathematics major, I think that's going to be a shift for us. I don't know if we've seen that sense of objectivity in recent years. So I think that's going to be a positive thing for us to witness as well.
For sure. And I want to remind everyone who's listening that you can join the conversation, share your thoughts, and ask your questions here on The Quest with Father Doug Brown. Call us up at 877-757-9424, 877-757-9424. We have a lot of comments coming in, Father. Maybe everyone is just still laying on the floor in shock from having an American Pope to actually pick up the phone and call us. But I have a question here from Monica in Oklahoma, and she's asking specifically for you, Father. Are you a chaplain or are you a pastor too? Are you a pastor?
Oh, I'm both.
Oh, you get
I'm
both.
So I'm a pastor at a church in the Cleveland neighborhood of Old Brooklyn, and I'm Mary Queen of Peace is my church. I have a school, so that takes up the majority of my time. But I also then serve as a chaplain for Cleveland Division of Police and Cleveland Division of Fire. That's kind of like my side job. So I do a little bit of both. So, but it's you balance it. It's a balance. And then I'm also chaplain for AM 1260 The Rock. So I kind of balance a lot of things. But thank you.
Keeping yourself very busy.
Absolutely.
What does it look like to be the chaplain for first responders? Is it doing special masses for them, blessing, or just are you on call for anything they need? What does that look like?
I'm on call for them and anything they need from me. Sometimes it's ceremonial, sometimes it's sacramental. It just kind of depends. Like today, I went on a sick call to visit a retired police officer, and his brother is still on the job. His brother drove me out to his home to anoint him and to pray with him as he's struggling. We have our police memorial week in which we remember all of the fallen officers in the greater Cleveland area. So that'll be something good too, I think.
Definitely. My confirmation saint, when I became Catholic, there was a lot of things I was, preparing for, but I also had to pick my confirmation saint, and I chose Saint Florian. I don't know if you're familiar with that particular saint, the patron saint of firefighters, because at the time, not only did I have a massive respect for our first responders, I had considered myself going in being an EMT or firefighter. And so when I was doing a lot of research, it came up very quickly because I joined RCIA towards the end of when you could join and come into the church at Easter. I was a little behind the game, and I was like, well, St. Florian's stick in my brain. I love the firefighters, so that's what I'm going to do. And so I've always had a deep love and prayer for any first responders. Anytime I hear a siren, I got to stop and pray.
That's awesome. So, I mean, you think about the amount of time that you put your thoughts and your prayers, you went into selecting a confirmation name. And we go back then to, being elected to the papacy. And what name are you going to choose? And how impactful is that going to be? And how much people are going to read into it as well. So I don't know that he has publicly stated yet exactly which Leo was the inspiration for his name. Because when Francis was first elected, there was a lot of conversation about, is it Francis of Assisi? Is it St. Francis Xavier? Many thought it was Francis Xavier because a fellow Jesuit. Francis was a Jesuit and Francis Xavier was a Jesuit. So that's what they thought. but it turned out that his inspiration was St. Francis of Assisi. So we'll wait to hear from Pope Leo XIV as to who might have been his inspiration.
I don't know if you're aware, I genuinely don't know either, but were any other Pope Leos Augustinian, or how many popes have we even had that have been Augustinian? I need to do a search on the internet.
I don't know.
So
I don't know.
I quiz you today, Father.
Well, I said before we got on the air, I said, I'm really no expert in this Pope stuff. I'm really not. So I expected to be bumped today. I really thought that we're going to bring in like some professor from a Catholic college and he could talk all about the history of the papacy and everything. And then no text or email ever came that I was being bumped. So here you are. So you got me today.
That's okay. Well, if you want to ask any questions to Father Brown, feel free to pick up the phone and call us up at 877-757-9424, 877-757-9424. We'll be on for the next hour talking all about our new Pope and any other topic that comes to mind. For instance, we have Vince in California is asking if you, Father Brown, are planning a trip or a pilgrimage to go see the new Pope at some point in time. Is that something, have you been able to go to the Vatican before?
So I went to Rome about maybe 14 years ago, a long time ago. Benedict was the Pope at the time. I've not gone since. I'm really a rotten traveler. I really dislike travel so much that I just don't really feel the need to travel much. So no, I don't plan a trip to Rome. I guess if I was called there, I'd go. Let's please pray, Lord, that I'm not called to Rome, because I don't want to be called there either. But no, I'm not planning a trip to Rome. Good question. There will be plenty of priests who will.
Sure, and I'm sure there are going to be lots of pilgrimages that you can join if you yourself are looking to go on one, Vince, because this is definitely an exciting time to go. And I wonder, because I know Pope Francis, because this was shortly after I became Catholic, that he made his trip to America and came to the United States. I'm curious. I wonder if being from America, if it means he's less inclined to immediately come here, or if he will make a journey this direction at some point in time. But maybe we don't have to go travel to him. Maybe he will come towards us.
He might. There's so much that we don't know right now.
Yeah.
Now, an interesting comparison that a lot of people have made is when Francis came out on the balcony, he was just wearing his white cassock. And when Leo XIV came out on the balcony today, he was wearing more of the papal garb, the mozzetta, and the stole as well. So that's interesting as well. And that what that says to me is that he's not going to be a carbon copy of Francis. He's going to be his own person. He's going to do his own things. And I think that's great. I think that's great for the church.
And I think he's well aware of how many eyes are on him and how many people are live tweeting, every move. Yeah. And so he just knows that he needs to say, I am going to be the Pope that God is calling me to be, and not any other. And so that definitely was very beautiful. We're going to be taking a break here in just a second, but I want to encourage you all to, like several others have already done, comment on any of our social platforms, email us so that you can respond. You can say what your thoughts are on our new Pope Leo XIV today. I'm here with Father Doug Brown from the Diocese of Cleveland, and we'll be on for the next 30 minutes or so answering your questions and comments. So go ahead and call us up at 877-757-9424, 877-757-9424, or you can email thequest@grnonline.com, or do like what a lot of people are doing. Our live stream is very popular right now on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, all of the above. Put your comments and questions there as well. We'll be right back with The Quest on the Guadalupe Radio Network after this short break.
This is Life News Radio. I'm Jim Anderson. 3 House Republicans are refusing to defund Planned Parenthood. The 3 representatives are Mike Lawler of New York, Jen Kiggans of Virginia, and Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania. A tough budget reconciliation measure could make Planned Parenthood defunding permanent. In related news, a live-action undercover sting saw Planned Parenthood willing to give a 16-year-old girl a same-day prescription for testosterone. Lila Rose calls prescribing drugs that can leave lifelong scars child abuse. And new work from the Charlotte Lozier Institute shows little need for Planned Parenthood in providing medical care for every one Planned Parenthood. We are funding 15 federally qualified health centers. This is Life News Radio.
Persecution around the world has manifested itself through the centuries, but it is worse today than ever before. Aid to the Church in Need and its donors have been there to help since 1947, never abandoning the Church or her most vulnerable children. Will you stand up for your faith and accompany our brothers and sisters on their spiritual journey? Visit churchinneed.org. churchinneed.org.
A Canadian father may be close to losing his court fight to save his daughter's life. The autistic 28-year-old filed medical aid in dying paperwork without telling her family and went shopping for doctors. One denied her request. A second took less than 24 hours to approve her state-approved medical death. And the Supreme Court in Baltic, Estonia, was asked if a suicide machine was part of health care, and it said no. But it offered that suicide is a right and demanded that legislators write law to guide the practice. For pro-life headlines delivered to your email address daily, sign up at lifenews.com. This has been Life News Radio.
You're listening to The Quest, a pilgrimage of faith. Have a question or something to share? Call the show live at 877-757-9424.
And welcome back, and thank you so much for listening to the Guadalupe Radio Network. This is our afternoon live show. You get to start your mornings with Morning Joy each day, weekday at 6 a.m. Central, and you get to end your afternoon, maybe your drive home, with The Quest each day at 4 p.m. Central Time. We're so glad that you're here with us, and of course, the topic of today's show is all about our new Pope, Pope Leo XIV. Hopefully you have already said many prayers for him and will continue to pray for him and our whole church as we go through this transitional period, but it's one that is full of hope and that is full of excitement. My priestly guest today is Father Doug Brown from the Diocese of Cleveland, who is a first responder chaplain and also a pastor there in the diocese, and a voice that you will hear if you're in Cleveland on the Catholic radio station there, The Rock, 1260 AM. Thank you so much, Father, again for being with us today. And we have a caller on the line, Rudy from San Antonio, listening to 89.7 FM, our station there in San Antonio. Rudy, thank you so much for calling. You're on the air with Father Brown.
Good afternoon. I have a question or a couple of questions. I heard earlier that the new Pope was a registered Republican. Are priests, bishops, cardinals, are they allowed to vote? Do they vote in American elections if they can?
Yeah, thanks, Rudy. That's a great question. A lot of people wonder those things. And we are encouraged to vote. We're encouraged to be a part of the civil process. So we do register to vote. And I'd mentioned earlier about, the proliferation of social media and information online, that this is new to us, I think, as a church when we have a new Holy Father. Finding this information immediately is so interesting. But I caution folks from, reading too much into, what we may find out initially. So we also have to remember that Pope Leo XIV is a dual citizen, not only of the United States, but also of Peru, and that his context is going to be shaped and flavored by what he's done in Peru for many years. So I think we can't always put him in our American box of, if he's a Republican, then this is what he believes and this is how it is, whatever your political affiliation may be. So we have to be careful about not forming opinions based upon limited information that we know. But I saw the same thing. It's all over the internet, and that's a new thing for us to deal with as a church.
Okay, one more question. I understand, or I've always understood, that the Catholic Church doesn't want priests or bishops or whoever to talk about politics like at Mass. Is that true or not true?
So Rudy, what the church asks us to do as priests is that we can talk about the issues. So there are social issues that certainly we are encouraged to speak about, but we cannot promote an individual candidate. We're not allowed to do that in the United States. In other countries, it's probably somewhat different. I don't know a lot about that. I know where I'm from, where I'm at, and what happens in this country. So we're not allowed to promote a specific candidate, but we can talk about the issues. Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you for your time, your answers. I'm more aware of something now.
Thanks, Rudy. Good to talk to you.
I'm so glad that you called in, Rudy, and asked your questions and got some clarity. And I'm sure there's a lot of other people listening, Father, who had similar questions to Rudy. And if you have any other comments or questions you'd like to ask, feel free to call us up here on The Quest, 877-757-9424, 877-757-9424. And to clarify from earlier, Father, we were talking about previous popes that were Augustinian. Dave on YouTube commented that Pope Benedict XVI was an Augustinian pope in the sense of leaning towards the theology and the way that St. Augustine spoke and taught. And I think that is the most recent in history that we can come up with on our very quick internet research.
I'd agree with that. I think that's a good statement. I think that the way that Benedict certainly was an intellectual, presented, very much clear teachings, and the way that he presented them was good. I mean, again, was in the Augustinian flavor. So that's a great point, Dave. And I think that your perspective is really good. I'm glad that you shared that with us.
And thank you so much to everyone else who is watching and commenting on all of our social streams. There are a lot of chatter and a lot of people just being excited about the election of Pope Leo XIV. So if you have any questions or comments, make sure you put them in the chat box, and we will respond to them there as well. And Dee from Houston commented, Father Brown, I love how the Holy Father said the Hail Mary. Do you feel close to Mary? Is what her question is.
Absolutely. You have to as a priest, because I look at myself, and when I'm celebrating Mass at the time of the consecration, I stand in persone Christe, in the place of Christ. That makes me at that moment one of her sons. And so I also feel that sense of sonship of our Blessed Mother on a daily basis. She is my mother, and I look to her often for her great intercessory, maternal presence in my life. As a priest, if you don't have a great devotion to our Blessed Mother, then I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, I don't want to pass judgment on anybody, but I think you have to as a priest. Mm-hmm. The other thing is that he was elected. He made a reference in his opening comments, his talk earlier today, about asking Our Lady of Pompeii to pray for us. And this has been a feast day for Our Lady of Pompeii, and how beautiful that is that he referenced her and references Marian feast day. So I love those types of things that happen. They just happen. So I was ordained on the feast of Our Lady of Fatima. I love that. And I know another priest who has told me that his prayer is to die on a Marian feast day. I think that's great too. And maybe that's my prayer too. I don't know. It'd be beautiful. It'd be absolutely beautiful.
Thank you so much for that, Father Brown. Please feel free to call us up and ask your questions to Father Brown as well as we continue on with the quest. We're in the last quarter of our hour, roughly. A little bit, my timing is a little bit off there, but roughly a quarter of our hour. But we still have plenty of time to take your calls and your questions and comments, however you'd like to do it, whether you want to call in at 877-757-9424, 877-757-9424, or if you want to email thequest@grnonline.com, thequest@grnonline.com, or if you would like to just comment on any of our social media platforms, you can find us on pretty much any social media you can think of at GRN. Is the handle that you will do. I as a Gen Zer, I still don't quite understand how all the handles work and the ats and stuff, Father, but
I get it. I get it. So Sissel, though, but when we're talking again about this proliferation of information that's out there, I also want to caution our listeners against, it's easy for us to go to like the big news networks that we're familiar with. So whether it's the national networks, CBS, ABC, ABC, or whether we're going to Fox, CNN, whatever those are, we have to remember that oftentimes in these initial hours and days after a Holy Father has been elected, that the perspective of the reporter or the perspective of that media outlet is going to be reflected on how they're perceiving the Pope.
Exactly.
And because we really don't know what kind of Pope he's going to be. There's so little that we know. And so we have to be patient. But I do caution folks about getting exclusively your information from those major media outlets. I do encourage you, of course, to listen to Catholic radio and to tune into Catholic media and to follow Catholic media and to read Catholic media, all of those things to help get the Catholic perspective on what our new Holy Father will do. But in the end, we don't really know. We have to be patient. We can't know everything right away. We have to allow God to reveal it to us. And certainly there is something mystical that happens when a man is elected Pope. There's something mystical that happens. Just as a priest, when a man becomes a priest, we always say that, somehow that changes him. And I see it within myself. And, there were guys who, I've seen in the seminary, and I was like, oh, that guy's he's going to be a rough priest. And then he becomes a priest and he's fantastic. And we say that's the grace of orders, the grace of holy orders that has helped to perfect the imperfections in that person. I think the same thing happens when someone is elected Pope. So we can't look at the things that he's done and said and make assumptions on the future because we don't know.
We really don't like to hear that, Father, because we do want to know we have no patience. We want to know everything. And it's interesting. I was thinking about it because I was able to interview one of our local bishops recently on the conclave and prepare, what we, the lay faithful, should be doing, the right, the right position of our hearts and minds should be. And there was a lot of caution of, that if we just a pope is announced and we make a judgment on them very quickly, one way or the other, what kind of pope they're going to be. And that's not really, I don't believe, how our Lord works when he judges us, because we'd be in a heck of a lot of trouble if it was very, black and white in the first instance of seeing just like little snippets of what we've done and not the whole person, which we don't know.
I agree 100%. And people evolve in their leadership. Okay. And that's what happens. And so, sometimes I look at some of the things that I thought were priorities in my early days of my priesthood and compare them to today. And they're different. Times have changed, issues have changed, and my priorities have changed. And that's just a fact of life. I think it's going to happen with all of us. So let's not try to project what we read about Pope Leo XIV on him already. Let's give him a chance to see who he's going to be and what good he's going to do for our church. And so let's allow that to happen.
And we have a comment from Martin, who's asking what advice, Father, you would give, and this is going along the same line of moving forward with the new Pope. Just pray, or should we engage on social media?
I thought he was going to ask me what advice I would give the new Pope. I'm like, who am I? I'm not going to give him advice.
I thought you were
what
ready
advice
with your
would
answer.
I give the new Pope?
You're like, I don't know, man. Pray more.
Yeah,
pray,
exactly
pray,
right.
pray,
No idea. Stay humble.
Exactly.
That's all the advice to anybody. Stay humble, right?
No.
As for the faithful, certainly pray for the new Holy Father. Again, follow Catholic media outlets. I think that there's a greater clarity that you're going to find, and I think you're going to find an objectivity that you may not find in other media outlets. I'm not saying not to follow them or not to listen to them, but your primary source of information has got to be Catholic media, because you're going to get what's real and what's accurate and what's not based on subjection or anything like that. You're going to get good information. But pray for the Holy Father. If you still have to say your evening rosary, offer it for Pope Leo XIV. One day you walk into the Sistine Chapel as a cardinal And then 2 days later, you walk out and now you're the Pope and your life is dramatically different. It's completely different. How inspiring and how overwhelming that must be. Now, they call, so the room after he's elected Pope, the newly elected Pope goes into a room where he's allowed to pray and contemplate his decision. And then usually they have his vestments there waiting for him too in various sizes. They call that the room of tears because you're really committing to something that's going to be much bigger than you.
Yeah, I wouldn't even know where I would start with that. I would be the one crying in the room of tears. I would be filling it up for sure.
Well, it's called that for a reason,
yes,
Sissel, right? It
it's
has
a huge
to be.
transfer. It's asking for a very huge transformation and change, and change is hard. Even though it can be very good, it's very hard for a lot of us. This is The Quest, which is a production of the Guadalupe Radio Network. We're on each afternoon at 4 p.m. Central Time, and we encourage you to call in and participate. We're talking about our new Pope, the first American Pope, Pope Leo XIV, who was elected today. Please pray for him, and please call in and give us your thoughts, your comments, your questions. We're on the air with Father Doug Brown. 877-757-9424. 877-757-9424 is the number to call, or you can comment on our social media platforms or email thequest@grnonline.com. We'll be back right after this break.
This is Franciscan Media's Saint of the Day for May 8th. Today we celebrate St. Peter of Tarentaise. There are two men named Peter of Tarentaise who lived 1 century apart. The one we honor today is the younger Peter, born in France in the early part of the 12th century. The other Peter became Pope Innocent V. This Peter became a Cistercian monk and eventually served as abbot. In 1142, he was named Archbishop of Tarentaise, replacing a bishop who had been deposed because of corruption. Peter tackled his new assignment with vigor. He brought reform into his diocese, replaced lax clergy, and reached out to the poor. He visited all parts of his mountainous diocese on a regular basis. After about a decade as bishop, Peter disappeared for a year and lived quietly as a lay brother at an abbey in Switzerland. When he was found out, the reluctant bishop was persuaded to return to his post. He again focused many of his energies on the poor. Peter died in 1175 on his way home from an unsuccessful papal assignment to reconcile the kings of France and England. There's more about the saints along with inspiration and Catholic resources at our website, saintoftheday.org. From Franciscan Media, this has been Saint of the Day.
This is The Quest from the studios of the Guadalupe Radio Network. Share the show with a friend. You can find us on social media. Want to listen again? We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, the free Guadalupe Radio app, or wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts.
And welcome back to The Quest. This is our last segment on today's show. My name is Sissel Anderson, and I'm joined with Father Doug Brown from the Diocese of Cleveland on the air today on Pope Day, the day that we found out our new Pope. And I want to make sure I give a thank you to our producer, Matthew, who is doing a lot of things for us behind the scenes, monitoring comments and keeping us on the air and across our social platforms. So thank you for that, Matthew Maloney, all the work that you do. And Father, we just have a little bit of time remaining, but I have some more questions from YouTube. I've got Ryan, who is asking, do the non-voting cardinals have a say in the papal election, and do they go back home now that the conclave, once the conclave starts?
Well, thanks, Ryan. That's a great question. So, church law dictates that any cardinal over the age of 80, while he could still be elected as Pope, I believe that they stuck around. I mean, they want to be there too. They want to be able to witness history, right? And there was a picture I saw earlier today of Cardinal Wuerl, who was the former Cardinal of Washington, D.C., and there were a couple of other retired cardinals with him outside awaiting the announcement of the new Pope. So they stayed, and if I would stay too, I want to
Right.
be able to see that, to be there, to say I was there. I'm sure there might be some who say I'm just going to go home, and they could do that if they wanted to.
That's good. I would totally stay around as well. It'd be an exciting place to be. I mean, it was very full crowd there. And I know there are some people who were traveling just because they had already planned on going. And then, of course, things changed. Pope Francis died, and suddenly they're there during a conclave, which is super exciting. And I'm sure very happy to be there.
Did you see there were marching bands?
Yes.
Did you see
I
the marching
saw
bands
that.
like going through the crowd? I love that.
It was
so
there
great.
was so much excitement. I mean, when the white smoke came up, there was so much excitement in the square. Everyone was just full of joy and hope, and that's what I think the beautiful thing about this whole transition that we have is that it's just always going to be full of hope, because it's just like that. The church is alive and well. It's just an opportunity for us to see it and to see the growth. We also have a comment on YouTube from, I think Carl is the name. Hi, Father. Do you think this Pope, this is kind of, I think, the $1 million question I think that a lot of people have, Father. Do you think this Pope will pick up where his predecessor left off, or will he change things back?
So I also saw this comment. This is Carol. So I know Carol. She's from Cleveland.
Excuse me.
Hi, Carol. So you asking me tough questions, put me on the spot.
It's always great when a friend does that, right?
Yeah, that's what friends do, I suppose. I think that he's going to be his own person, and the issues today are not the issues 12 years ago when Francis came in, and certainly over the last probably 2 years, we've seen Francis with diminishing capabilities as Holy Father. So it's hard to say what Francis might have done differently over the last 2 years had he been at full physical capability. We don't know that. So to continue what Francis has started, I mean, there may be some things. There may be some things that he won't. I go back to him presenting himself for the first time, the impressions that we saw coming out on the balcony, wearing the papal vestments, the stole and the mozzetta, and that to me was very different than Francis's first appearance to the world when he just wore the white cassock.
And Father, I'm sure you've probably gone from parish to parish and been pastor or different positions in parishes. And I know that often, even when there's that transition, sometimes there might be changes eventually made or adjusted or just following in the steps of the predecessor. But it's a time of transition and learning too. I think most of the time priests probably don't come in and completely like, I'm going to just change how everything's run around here at this church. That probably wouldn't be the wisest thing to do either.
No, they tell us to wait a year usually. I mean, that's been the old standard philosophy. Now there are some things that can't wait, right?
Sure.
There are some things that need a pastor's immediate attention, and there are some things that need the immediate attention of a Holy Father. And I think that people have been quick to identify some of those things. However, this reminds me. So when Pope Benedict was elected, I was in the seminary. And it was during our lunchtime, and then we heard who the Pope was, and we went and sat back out and ate our lunch. It just kind of the day went on, right? And there was somebody at my table. They said, "Well, Pope Benedict sure has a lot of things he needs to look at." And then there was somebody else at my table. They said, "He's been Pope for 10 minutes. Give the guy a break." So we have to be patient. We have to acknowledge that some things may take time. Okay. Some things somebody made a good example today online. They said, there's not like we looked at 100 days of President Trump's presidency and there was measurements that were done. It's not like that with the Holy Father at all. There's not those type of measurements. We can't look at the papacy as a political office. There may be politics involved with it, but it's not a political office.
That's a very good reminder, Father. And I feel like having access to all information very quickly is not super helpful to us in the regards that there was a time in our church where most of our church has been around for that by the time the news reached that the Pope, there was a new Pope and who it was, first off, maybe people didn't even they couldn't Google who this Pope was. So they may not have even known who he was previously as a cardinal, as a bishop. But also, so they couldn't have any really preconceived ideas about him. But additionally, that gives them a little bit of time to get ready and to pray and to prepare for this really important vocation in his life as well.
I agree with that. And so we have to give him some space and some time to be able to do that, to adjust to his new role. And again, to assess where the priorities are in the church, just as any new leader. So, when a pastor takes over a parish, oftentimes that pastor to try to get people whom they trust, whom they feel share the same vision that they do. I imagine that those will be some of the initial decisions that Pope Leo XIV will make. Is the staff, the people who surround him. He'll look at who's going to be there and how they can help him do what he wants to do.
That's a good point. That's something the decisions that we can be praying for him to be making in the coming days. And of course, just praying in general for him, because the whole world is watching. It's a lot of pressure. And it's a very beautiful role, but it's a big role that he has to fill here. And we just have a couple of minutes remaining, Father Brown. But I'm giving a formation night actually for my young adult group, my college and young adult group tonight. And we had already planned to talk about conclaves. Of course, today ended up going a little bit differently. We had planned this a few weeks in advance before, when we found out that Pope Francis had passed away. We changed. And what do you think is something that would be important for me to tell, and maybe anyone else who works in ministry, that's some advice to give anyone about this time in a transition in our church that would be good for us to remember?
I think we have to remember. So again, I've been a priest for about 19 years. I've had several Holy Father. Well, two. This is the third Holy Father in my priesthood that I've had. And when we look at our daily lives, what our daily lives are like, what the impact with us, realistically and honestly,
Oh, I think we may have lost Father Brown. I think we lost his connection there, which is really unfortunate because he was giving some great wisdom there. But hopefully we can get him back for a final blessing. But if not, I just want to remind you all that you've been listening to The Quest, which is a production of the Guadalupe Radio Network. And each day we have a different priest on. We have certain priests that are on the same days. And today we have our guest priest, Father Doug Brown, who's from the Diocese of Cleveland, who is first responder, chaplain. So he does a lot of beautiful work in addition to working in a parish there in the Cleveland area. So we thank him so much for joining us, for talking on this day of hope and of joy, when we have chosen a new Pope for our Catholic Church. And it's very exciting, and I appreciate all the comments and questions that we got and phone calls today. And tomorrow, make sure that you tune in again to The Quest at 4 p.m. Central Time. Monsignor Charles Pope will be on, and he is going to do a reflection of the Sunday Gospel reading. So make sure you are tuning in for that. And I have enjoyed my time on The Quest in the last couple of weeks while Madigan has been out. Again, my name is Sissel Anderson, but don't worry, Madigan will be returning very soon. And of course, tune in tomorrow morning, bright and early at 6 a.m. Central Time to Morning Joy with Keith Downey, and catch that show. I'm sure he's going to have plenty to talk about with all this beautiful transition that is happening in our church. God bless you all, and I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your Thursday afternoon.
Faith, hope, charity. This is the Guadalupe Radio Network, radio for your soul.